So good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining this second roundtable about prepping your front desk for the return to work. I'm very pleased to welcome Lou and Matt today. Before we dive in, a few housekeeping information. First of all, the webinar will be recorded, and so if you want to share it later or watch it again, it will be available to you or to anyone who wants to watch it. The session should last a bit less than an hour, 45 minutes, something like that, depending on the questions we have. Lou and Matt, as you can see, are working from home, so there might be a bit of noise in the background. I'm working from the office in Brussels, so I moved from our New York office, actually from my New York home to our Brussels office last week, and we have it open with a limited number of people. With desk booking system, only 15 people are allowed in out of the 50 or 60 people that are potentially able to come to the office. If you have questions at any time, if you'd like to share your own experience, please use the chat. Don't hesitate to raise questions, and we'll answer them as we speak or at the end of the presentation. We'll conduct polls during the session to better understand the audience and the interest. So let me now start by giving the word to Lou and Matt so that they can introduce themselves. Lou.
Hi guys, so my name's Lou, or Lewis Hatch. I work at Idemia. I have a rather long title, which is seemingly more and more popular these days. But in simple terms, I'm one of the members of the team who look after physical security at one of the business units within Idemia. So we're a very global business by nature, and yeah, that's what I focus on. So why I'm here is because visitors come to our facilities, and we have to make sure we can manage them in both a secure way and a safe way. You'll notice throughout this, I guess, session, I'm probably going to give the answer's not always going to be yes or no because of the global nature of my position, and the global nature of the pandemic we're in. It's transferred the way it was, where it started to where it is now. Most countries are on a different timeline. So, and that makes our job even more exciting, but that's it from me. Over to you, Matt.
Thanks, Lou. Hi, everyone. I'm Matt Graham. I work for Ernst Young, or EY, as our brand is officially known worldwide. I'm part of a team within our real estate organization, focusing particularly on technology and innovation. So focusing on all of those elements that don't sit comfortably in IT, but nobody else will do. So we get to manage things like visitor management systems, like reservation software, communications platforms, etc., audio-visual physical access, and all of that fun stuff, as well as investigate kind of the future of the workplace and the technologies that will come in and influence our spaces. My role through this COVID crisis has really been to facilitate the office reopening for all of our EMEA and Asia Pacific offices. Now, EY is a partnership, which means that every country has a different member firm. Every country has a different command structure. So we have to negotiate a very tricky environment with lots of different regulations in play. And it's been an absolute learning curve for all of us in terms of getting people back into work safely, in terms of how best we start reintroducing visitors into our workplace and getting our people out to visit clients as well. So just, yeah, I thought it'd be a great opportunity to share some of our learnings from that, and hopefully learn from the other people on the panel as well.
Thanks. So we have you with technology and innovation role, and Lou with more security angle, right?
Correct.
And so if you both worked with your counterparts the other team in that process?
Yeah, for sure. So with us, it's kind of been what's been kind of, dare I say nice, but what's been kind of good is there's been a lot of collaboration. I think because everyone's understood the depth of the situation it is and the challenge, exactly as Matt said just before, that it's a steep learning curve for everybody. So everybody's in general been very open to collaboration. And I think when I've been thinking about one of the nicest, if there is such a thing to have come out of this, is there's been a lot more meeting in the middle and working together. So for example, us in security, or let's say in a corporate position, we have been helping to support people to ensure they can still work within our security framework and playing around in the boundaries. But at a local level and at a corporate level as well, you've had the management team, the human resources, the facility, kind of everyone, let's say, has collaborated within Idemia. It's not been one department or one place just taking ownership. And we've been one of those stakeholders within that discussion.
Yeah, such a good point, Lou. I think the one of my favorite memes that has come out of the COVID crisis so far has been that one about what's the biggest driver of innovation in your organization, the CEO, the CTO, or COVID-19? And it really has been around the COVID-19 side of things. It's almost there has been a kind of sense of community that's been created. A lot of the traditional silos, I feel, have had to be breached. So there's been a lot more cross collaboration. My team's been working incredibly closely with both our global risk teams, who kind of form our overarching security strategy, our global legal teams, and our local risk teams, to understand the specific requirements at a country to country level, and to see how we can flex our solution to meet those requirements. So yeah, I mean, thankfully, as punishment, one of my previous roles was to roll out our reservation system throughout EMEA. So I did have a lot of good contacts already within our facilities organizations and security organizations from that. And it's just been incredibly valuable to be able to flex those contacts to come up with solutions. And it's also been really nice as well to bypass some of the traditional hurdles for getting new products into the sphere, just because there is such a rush to get everything in place. So our network security checks may not be quite as robust as they have been traditionally, and people have been more willing to review products and get them operational quicker than they would have been before. So yeah, it's been a learning curve, but also a great opportunity for collaboration.
That's nice, because it's
thanks, Matt. And
oh, sorry. I was just going to say that's like what you said. That's kind of like where you've got two departments or two people with two different interests, and historically they may have said, this is my process, and Department B said, this is mine. And before it was kind of a battle of two titans, but now people are, there's this collaborative spirit with it. Yeah.
Harmony. Great to hear. And so to close the loop on introduction, so I'm the CEO of Proxyclick and the founder. And so we very happy, of course, to have you both sitting on that panel and sharing your experience at the front desk and in general handling visitors. You both have been, we've been working together for a while. Idemia started recently, and I was telling the other day, Lou, you were on my Skype as one of my contacts back in the time where we were using Skype to chat. And so for many years, you've been wondering about when are we getting started with visitor management. And luckily that has happened. And you, Matt, it's a bit older. You've been using it for, I think, 2 years, using our solution. But we'll get back into that. So in the next 40 minutes or so, we'll look at your initial reaction when the pandemic hit. The virus started to close, many locations to close around the globe. We'll look at the lockdown. How did you handle the office shutdown? In some cases, warehouses or factories needed to remain open, Lou, so you'll give a word on that, I assume. And then we'll dive into the actual part of the discussion, or the main part of the discussion, which is the reopening or the post-lockdown approach with 3 parts. How did you transform your lobby transform your lobby? Space utilization, did you do anything there? Which processes did you change? Second part, and the technology used. I'll try to structure the conversation around these three topics, but I can already feel it will go in different directions, which is great. So let me start with security and you. So what was your initial reaction when the lockdown was announced? Where were you at that time?
I actually kind of need to. I feel a bit guilty about this one. I remember back in, so it was maybe about the February time, there was activity, it was all starting to get a bit more global by this point. We had one of my colleagues down in Kuala Lumpur, and she was due to have an audit. So with an external person coming to site for a few days in April. And she was like, we need to cancel it. This is going to go bad. I was like, nah, it's fine. It's fine. It's not going to spread. It's not going to spread. A week later, everything was starting to cancel and shut down. So that's my first, that for me was a very big learning curve or a learning opportunity that, okay, this is the real thing. And just because it never had something like that impact me and being a European before, there's now a time to notice. But that's just my personal learning curve. But for us within the company, or me within the security aspect, we have a facility in China. So I think it was around the Chinese holiday where normally the facility closes down, which is quite normal. However, quite simply, it just people didn't come back and it didn't reopen to the same level for quite a period because of the government lockdowns. Now, you could say from our perspective, from security, that was okay because we'd already shut down and locked down the facility. There was no overnight urgent drama that we had to all of a sudden close it because of the Chinese holiday that was already there. But that was really the first link in a set of chain reactions that we then took throughout. But the start point was for me in China. Yeah.
What about you, Matt? What triggered it all at EY?
Well, I mean,
Who came to you first? Yeah. Who came to you first and told you, we need you, Matt?
Oh, yeah. So I'll preface this by saying I've been a home worker for about 5 years now. I pop up to our London office maybe once or twice a month just to maintain contacts and see what's going on. But the rest of the time I work from home. So this was it took me a while to notice that anything was really going on anyway. Our first port of call really was from local FM teams as it filtered through different countries to go. We need to shut down our booking systems. We need to get those communications up and running. So that was our first port of call, was just going online, making sure that we changed the messaging on the platforms that people use to book space in our buildings to reflect that they were shut. Then work with local sites to make sure that there weren't any rooms slipping through that were still available to book, so people wouldn't turn up at offices with bookings. And demand to get in, because you have a vast variety of people within any workspace. Some listen, some read, some don't. And then the kind of next stage was immediately starting to re-strategize around what our approach was going to be in terms of re-enabling buildings to start reopening. I think from a security aspect, I guess it was generally handled pretty smoothly within our local facilities organizations, but we were still hearing stories of people who, after being told they needed to work from home, were turning up at the office to come and take monitors off the desks because they didn't have the equipment at home, and having to be gently reminded that these were company property. But it has been good to see, as an aside to that our kind of IT organization are working with some of our major suppliers to start offering packages for people working from home, either heavily discounted on essential equipment, or if it's available in the office to send them through to those people most in need. So that's been a real heartening thing to see from a response perspective.
Are any of the offices, the EY offices around the world, open today?
Yes. I mean, we started reopening our offices, I think. Some of them never really shut all the way. Hong Kong remained open throughout. I think they were shut for maybe 2 or 3 days, and then cautiously reopened without any sort of tools. But we started a phased or controlled reopening of offices, I think, with Paris, which opened a kind of insignificant number of desks from the 11th of May. We're now up to, I think, about 160 other locations globally that are reopened to some degree, allowing primarily staff in, very limited visitor visits allowed at the moment. And we've kind of adopted a phased approach into this to make sure that we have well embedded systems in place at the local level to manage people as they come in, pre-inform on arrival and all those kind of things. So yes, we're well in the thick of it. In fact, I'd say we're over the first panicked hump of trying to get people back in, figuring out how everything's going to work, changing programming on the fly, and now we've kind of got some established routines in, and more importantly, I think a community of locations now who are kind of enabling each other, sharing their best practices, making, coming up with their own solutions within our overall solution. So yeah, it's been that aspect of it, going back to what we were talking about from a community perspective earlier, has been incredibly valuable. But it's been nice. I've had a bit more of a room to breathe for the last couple of weeks. So my days are getting back to normal hours again, which is great.
Just as the weather starts to get nicer. So
did people leave computers as well? Did they come pick up the monitors?
Yeah, so with us, it's kind of, or at least with the facilities within my remit, is we've got, apart from a couple of sites for a couple of days, for various local reasons, all of our facilities have been open. All of these are my facilities, because we are factories where we produce things that are typically deemed as critical infrastructure. Because let's say we produce credit cards and payment cards at Idemia within my area. What's really important today is actually being able to pay contactless with a card. So that's something that's been encouraged and incentivized. So we have to stay open to enable people to pay in these ways. So actually so we've kind of got two stories on this side. We've got the office staff. Yeah, for sure. Office staff go home, work from home, such as myself. However, exactly like Matt, I work from home anyway. So from a personal perspective, I work from home.
How many locations do you have across the globe?
Within my remit, we're at about 40. Company-wide, it's 150 odd or something like that. So we've got about 40 locations spread truly east to west. But yeah, so we've got these office staff, they went home. And I can give you a little example about one of the guys in the team. So it was actually my boss. He went home and he was working from home and he had his laptop. And he's used to being sat in the office with his 3 monitors and all his tech. And he was like, I can't work on this little screen. So it took, I guess, maybe a month. But you were able to go back into the office in the UK for us by making a request with your reasoning. And then you'd have a set time. And it was very structured. But yeah, that's we got the factory in the office, and our office is closed, let's say in general, but our factories all stayed open. And people did go in to steal their IT stuff. We can say steal, but borrow their stuff for their home.
Took home. Yeah. And have you, so to go back on my initial agenda, so did you, on the first part of the first question is, did you arrange or refurbish the front desk or the entrance areas of your factories? Did anything change?
So for us in the lobby area, in one aspect, because of the high security environment, we don't actually have any, there's bulletproof window between the receptionist or the guard and the visitor anyway. So from that point of view, it's okay. However, one thing that was very clearly done is to demarcate a sort of one-way system throughout the facility, so you could only go in one way or out of another, and set a sort of, put structure on where people can and can't walk. That was the main thing for us in our reception to really help that. And then, of course, with informative posters, etc. But just on the space, it was mainly one-way systems.
And at EY, did you?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, obviously, initially, everything was just shut down, full stop. Very much a skeleton crew of essential personnel were allowed in buildings. And as Lou alluded to, even those people who are allowed in buildings needed to run through an approval process, because ultimately, from a liability perspective, the CEO of each country's firm is liable for anything that happens in any of the country's offices. So there was quickly established some fairly manual processes to get the essential staff back in, from a security perspective, from a reception perspective, etc. Once the kind of dynamics changed, once the whole idea that the offices were properly closed was socialized with the main body of the workforce, then the planning immediately started shifting to that. Well, how do we start reopening in this phased manner? We became involved, obviously, to provide the tools that our staff could use to request spaces, and the automated messaging systems that could be put in place to support all of that structure, both to notify our front of house teams, exactly who was coming in on what day, and then what we've just implemented in the last kind of 3 weeks as well, to notify our front of house teams about the current certification status, for want of a better word, of our staff. So we have an internal self-certification app that's kind of configurable on a country-by-country basis to comply with any of the privacy legislation as part of that country. But our front of house teams in particular, they've really been flat out in working with local graphics companies to come up with signage. Our internal FM, like hard services teams, have been installing perspex glasses. We don't have the advantage of pre-installed bulletproof glass in our locations. So installing perspex screens. The kind of the essential IT support personnel going around, initially just disabling or soft disabling the touch surfaces until a strategy could be coped with that. And then for most of our locations that have been early reopening, ordering things like PPE. So we have, and it varies from location to location. Again, some sites will just issue one set of PPE per staff. Some sites are leveraging our reservation system to track the number of visits a staff member has and issue them with another set of PPE after X number of visits, etc. They're all nicely branded. So I don't know how hospitals couldn't get them, but we could get branded PPE. That's another question. So yeah, I think from a front of house perspective, it's really been around how to flow the people who are visiting our buildings, in a way that maintains social distancing. So we've adopted strategies around having predefined arrival times for people coming into the building, so that we never have that, your rush hour congregation. That needs to be avoided at all costs. And then looking at strategies to minimize the amount of interaction, human to human, that our reception teams have to have with visitors as well. So looking at ways to pre-clear our staff, so that all they need to essentially do to get in is hold up a mobile phone with a pass. And then as we move forward and start allowing greater numbers of visitors external into our building, looking at the tools to use to manage that, which is obviously where Proxyclick's been coming in for us.
And did you give any training to your staff on how to, health and safety and distance and how to behave if people don't wear masks or instructions?
Yeah, I mean, for the most side, that's been handled at the local level. We worked in partnership with Risk to come up with minimum guidelines for all of our locations. So basically, if a country's guidelines are below our minimum guidelines, the office needs to follow our minimum guidelines. If a country's guidelines are obviously at a higher or more protected level, then the office would need to follow those. That was a judgment call made from our global leadership there. But then, yeah, just making sure that we're enabling teams. I think it's really about, there's when we started looking at allowing people back into the buildings, it's really about the balance of low tech solutions and kind of high tech solutions. We were very conscious that we've been working for the last 5 years on a real estate strategy where it's really about free address, find the space that you want in the office to work, and that kind of left us in the slight quandary that people had no idea how to get to a specific desk number in our buildings. So we really had to go, all right, well, how do we solve this quickly and easily, and with a simple way that local FM teams could do, and kind of left and said, look, just make things easily identifiable, simple messaging as much as you can get around. So different teams have adopted different approaches for identifying safe spaces for a day, sticking up colored cards, putting ribbons on the back of chairs, laminated, highly visible, like days of the week signs. So you can use this on Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, etc. So it's really been, although I work in the technology and innovation side, there's no substitute for obvious and clear signage in a space. So we've had, as part of the kind of group that are set up and leveraging teams to support all of this, we've just had loads of great examples coming in from around the world. People working with graphics design companies to kind of really make it clear and obvious. And then, obviously the reception teams just being empowered to enforce those rules. Working with our various landlords as well, because again, we'll have different size offices all around the world, from leasing out an entire building to leasing out half of a floor. So we'll have different levels of control over our spaces, and in those buildings that we're just a small subtenant in, making sure that that we run a landlord checklist, making sure that kind of our landlords were adopting kind of high quality air filtration in their air handling systems, making sure that they had PPE available as well as us, making sure that they had sanitization protocols in place. So we established a whole big Power BI checklist for all of our landlords to kind of complete, just to certify that as far as we were concerned, they were ready to host EY back in their buildings as well.
From you, we've had a lot of patients with our customers in the last 3 months, more than usual, and we heard a big team that kept coming back. Social distancing. How can you help us limit the visitors on a certain day? Limit the number of people in the meeting room. Second topic is avoiding contacts between people and systems, like PAD, for instance. Do you have a solution to that? Elevators, big topic. People in crowd on the elevators and touching the button. E-notifications. How can we help that? And then the screening of people in ads. Lou, how does that look like at Idemia?
So we've got you got a couple of questions there. I think with regards to when you were talking about how we will reduce the interaction between visitors and our staff, if we just look at the front desk in the reception area, one thing that has been, I guess, as a positive side again out of this situation is we are currently in a transition from a paper-based system to Proxyclick. We are currently going through the transition. So, and one of the key points is with our old paper system, you move the paper or the notepad back and forth between the visitor and the receptionist. So that in itself is something that people want to avoid, you know, for sure. So there's actually been a demand or a desire to have a way of, okay, there may be some communication through a plastic or a bulletproof window, but all the documentation and the recording is tracked through an iPad. So, but an iPad that only they have touched. There is then the challenge of, let's say, cleaning it after. But we have looked at, in all honesty, we just put a pot of wipes next to it and ask the person to wipe it down after. That's all we have today. But what it's done is it's made it so a person is responsible for their own registration areas. They don't physically interact with somebody else just for their registration, which is the benefit of having a Proxyclick. And with regards to within our, let's say as you migrate a bit more throughout the facility, and as you mentioned about elevators or lifts and things like that, for sure, as Matt said, you stagger the opening hours is what we've done, or staggered the arrival times. We put people in sort of groups in some areas, so we don't have this huge wave of personnel arriving. And with regards to the technology side, what's also pretty fortunate for us is we as Idemia actually have multiple products for a contactless movement within a facility. So historically, let's say, just to give a little note, we have some devices which can read your iris or your faces, which we are now looking at using in places, because when we're designing a new facility, we still want to be able to move around in a sterile way in case this happens again. So we're looking at ways of designing the future with more better use of technology for frictionless movement.
Yeah, I remember testing your touchless access system at an exhibition. You know, you pass your fingers through a reader and it opens up the door. So quite impressive technology that you offer. On the remote registration, because as you know, this is something we released 2 weeks ago, or a few weeks ago in a beta. We allow then visitors to pre-register, to pre-check-in remotely. So I remember we showed this a few weeks ago, Matt, and then you presented it to your management. Can you explain how that went? What was the reaction of forcing all your visitors to go through a set of questions before being even considered to be welcome?
Yeah, absolutely. And I see a question has popped up in the chat as well. Very quite similar to that. So as Gregory mentioned earlier, so we've been slowly implementing Proxyclick for about 2 years now, starting off with a trial in our headquarters in London, which, if there's anywhere that you're going to trial something, it's a good place to do it. I think we so 7,000 staff call that home. So high-level restaurant facilities, a huge big meeting rooms, and that's worked out well. We've been gradually expanding now that we've kind of ironed out the kinks on that. But when this all hit, after we'd got our staff return to office process in place, the immediate, obviously, next thing that we needed to turn our attention to was when we start opening our doors in a more meaningful way to visitors. How do we do that at the same, while still implementing the same level of security that we're doing for our staff, the same level of pre-screening. And almost as if they'd read our minds, on one of the calls with one of my calls with Henry, he was talking about the beta version of the pre-clearance question tool in the logbook that was up and running. So myself and my boss Jeff immediately got permission to have that added to some of our test locations, and started setting up pre-clearance question routines and testing them out. And it worked really well. Found out quite a few little interesting things about how it worked off the back end of that, in terms of being able to set how far in front of a visit the questions get sent out. So we then took one of our older Proxyclick presentations that we'd been showing for the last 6 months, condensed it, added this new functionality at the end, and presented it to our global risk leadership. As I mentioned earlier, we were working very closely with risk on our staff return to office process, and risk provided the self-certification tool for our internal team. And so it was the easiest sell in the world to go, hey, this product that we've already implemented, that we've already taken through all of our network security, information security processes, the company have just implemented the ability to replicate essentially what we're doing for our staff for visitors. And we ran them through it. We gave them a live test, sent them an invite, had the follow-up email with the pre-clearance questions, and we also did it in different formats. Obviously, with our internal processes, we were very conscious of the fact that from country to country and even city to city, you'll have vastly different interpretations of personally identifiable information, of data retention, etc. So we'd already started looking at different approaches to that. We had one of the easiest things to do is, instead of asking health questions of people, obviously to get more accurate answers, you want to ask health questions, but in some locations you just can't. You can turn that around and just ask your visitors that they are either aware of government legislation as related to going out in public or going into enclosed spaces in light of COVID-19. You can even include that legislation as part of the pre-clearance. And one of the nice things about it as well is the ability for them to submit a digital signature to confirm that, and send that back as part of the process. And I think once we'd elaborated on that, we immediately, I think, placed an order for all of our America's locations. Not sure how many there are, 150 odd or something. Just to run Proxyclick as purely a software tool, just to prepare for the inevitable arrival of our visitors in our American offices. And that's generally what our approach is going to be when it comes to those sites that are leveraging Proxyclick. If they're not leveraging, we're going to obviously try and get them on when they're ready to introduce visitors. And if they are leveraging, it's really about going in not necessarily with any of the iPads or anything like that initially, to leverage the pre-clearance to its full capacity, have visitors, request visitors complete the self-certification, and then it's just down to a reception person to check the visitor in on a computer or through a terminal that they're holding. So again, minimizing as far as possible, the interactions and contact points in the process. So yeah, there was a lot of excitement generated off the back of the fact that we almost, as if by magic, came to them with a solution that mirrored what we'd established. So yeah, great timing there, Greg. You you made life a lot simpler for us.
You took the credit.
I've been in your London HQ, and you have like 6 or 7 iPads. Are they gone? Did you remove them now, or they just?
Oh yeah, they're just off. They're just offline.
Just offline. Okay.
Yeah. Thankfully, we've got quite substantial facilities, like front of house teams over there, so it's quite easy to channel people to the right spot using simple old barrier tape and things like that. So yeah, we're focusing arrivals to a specific area where they can be dealt with a human.
Lou, do you have pressure to welcome visitors back to the office, or they will come last after all employees are back? Is there a policy in place for that?
Yeah, so it's kind of it's an interesting one, because because a lot of our facilities have had to remain open because we produce physical things, you can't remotely do some of the stuff. By nature, we've had to have some level of mandatory visitors. So throughout this whole process, we have had some visitors in a mandatory nature go to facilities. However, whereas before or pre-COVID, let's just say you needed your manager or one person or a security person to approve it. Now it went to the highest level within the country to approve every visitor. That was the first thing. So to request a visitor, it went very senior within the country to say, yes, this is needed or no. And the second thing was after that, in most cases, there was a form of a questionnaire. However, I must admit our questionnaire wasn't quite as fancy and snazzy as the new beta test. It was typically a PDF in a web form or something like that. It was, let's say, in a traditional model. It wasn't the new modern tech. But we didn't have, I think a big difference is the number of visitors was very low. Let's say I was looking at some data over the past few weeks of some of our smaller facilities in the Netherlands or in Sweden. We're talking a couple of people per week. So you can manage a manual process for that. We don't have a 7,000 person monster office. Like Matt did.
And what about temperature check? Is this something that your sites have been requesting?
Good point. Yes, in some locations we do. For example, in some of our facilities, be it in China, I know in Mexico and Brazil, there are people employed with a temperature thermometer, scanning people as everyone that comes in and out, primarily employees because we don't have many visitors. But when there's visitors, where everyone gets scanned in and out, and then if there's any concern, then they get, let's say, segmented and handled as a issue with HR, site management, and investigated. And then if there's a problem, we help them get home and they quarantine for 2 weeks. But that's one thing that's been across the whole company is if anyone's got any, what's been really nice, if anyone's got any symptoms, you go home, quarantine for 2 weeks, and then come back when you're ready. Just no questions asked, just go home, go.
Okay. Matt, I see a question here that is addressed to you. Patrick is asking about shifting arrival time. So how has that worked in multi-tenant environment?
Well, thankfully, most of our multi-tenanted offices, when we're at the kind of phase in the reopening process now where I think our offices may have 10 to 20% of their overall desk capacity available. So in our multi-tenanted environments, a lot of those you're looking at maybe having desks for 15 to 20 people. So it's not been as much of an issue there. But again, it's really about landlord coordination on that side, and kind of the pressure that we bring to bear on the landlords and the building management teams, so we understand the other tenants, how the other tenants are going to be coming back into the office, if indeed they are, and then kind of working it out from there. But depending on the situation, yeah, we'll look at different gaps between the arrival times. So in a busier offices, in a busier multi-tenanted location, we might have like hour cohorts every hour are allowed to arrive every hour, certain number of people, whereas in our smaller locations, you can apply for a 9 a.m. or a 9:15 a.m. or a 9:30 a.m. slot, because there's less pressure on the lobby, as it were. So yeah, I think the critical key is that kind of interaction with landlords and the specific building management, to see what the capacities are.
With us on that, actually, our headquarters in Paris was on the news twice, or let's say about a month ago, about how they implemented their return to work process, and it was pretty similar to you, Matt, with the your people scheduled, including being in France. The lunch is also a very important time, so they had scheduled lunch times, which is kind of a very French thing in my view. But it's kind of interesting. Like, so I had 2 meetings with French people today, and one of them had a purple wristband and another had an orange, and that's how they kind of track. You're an orange person, so you're doing these times, etc. It's that's how they, as exactly you said earlier, Matt, when you have to make it clear and simple, be it putting big UV signs or something. This is what they did. You've got an orange, so you know that I'm orange. Okay, that's it. Like being at a music festival.
Are you talking about lunches? Our office in Istanbul, as part of the kind of reopening package, they've got a takeaway menu. So as when people book their desk, they can also request a takeaway for the day and what slot they want it delivered to their desk. So that's a nice service. I wouldn't mind that at home.
Creativity.
Yeah.
While I launch poll question, let me ask you another question that popped up in that. How have you enforced social distancing with things like meeting software, limiting visitors per host? How do you manage those meeting rooms? Proxyclick, in our own offices, we had a consultant come, and he just defined the guidelines. On every door, we have a number of people authorized in at the same time. I have desk number. We never had number before. It was always free. So we need to sit specific place. When we walk on, we have to wear a mask, and I have mine next to me. So we have hand sanitizers in every room. We need to clean our chair when we step, just to ensure that the day after it's clean. We have cleaners coming every day. So what about your policy on meeting room and the rest?
Yeah, so
I'll take over.
I was expected.
Matt can look after
that.
I said earlier we were expecting an Amazon delivery, and it would undoubtedly arrive midway through this tour, and true that.
And this is the pleasure. This is the normalization that coronavirus has done. It's made everyone human again. So yeah, for us, it's also being a kind of a high security company. We already had a process on a maximum number of visitors per host anyway. We have a rule of a host should not have more than 3 visitors. So that kind of makes it a slightly, from the number of visitors, less of a dilemma, less of a challenge. However, in general, at the moment in time, we are not having, as a general rule, we're not having high number of visitors come to sites for meetings. They're only for critical, dare I say, infrastructure challenges. So let's say if a machine breaks down, they need to come in. So we're not at that point yet. However, within our offices, on the management of meeting rooms and stuff, we just are not at 100% capacity. We say, okay, I looked at the list earlier. We've got sites anywhere from about 25% up all the way. We've got one site at 100% personnel back on site, or one site that I saw. But on the sites, I would say the average is about 50%. So then you've got some sort of level of natural social distancing. And exactly as you said, Gregory, we've all got hand sanitizers everywhere you go now. So yeah, that's how it is for us. And Matt, maybe your dogs are behaving.
And nobody's dead. It's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So at the core of our office reopening process is the idea of capacity management. So it's not our staff can't have a meeting room unless they have a desk or unless they've reserved a desk for the day, which automatically reduces the pool of meeting room requirements, because they can't just go and turn up and say, I have a meeting room available for the day. Our local facilities teams, based on distancing guidelines, literally removed all the extra chairs from the meeting rooms. So our 8-person meeting rooms are now usually like a 3 or a 4-person meeting room. Our 4-person meeting room is down to a 2 sort of thing. So to ensure that those guidelines are adhered to, and then because essentially people request a room as part of their desk booking process, our facilities teams can then assign those rooms to people on the day based on when they come in. So people aren't booking a specific meeting room again, they're just booking the concept of a meeting room, and then the facilities teams can work, that meeting room was heavily utilized yesterday, let's shut that off, give it a day of rest and a day to kind of be disinfected, and we're going to use these 4 or 5 meeting rooms over the course of the day. It then makes it far easier to target the cleaning on the places that need it most within the building, and also to right size the meeting rooms. What we will be implementing as well is a technology type request as part of the meeting room request, because a lot of times people want a room for a specific purpose, particularly now. One of the drivers for people coming into the office is to facilitate workshops, much as we're doing now, and sometimes you need that equipment that you don't have from home, particularly if you're going interactive and using whiteboarding tools and things like that. So people can request the type of workshop or the type of work that they want to do as part of the office, coming into the office process, or indicating as part of their meeting, if they've got external visitors coming in, what type of meeting they need to have. Because then again, it can be managed at that personal level by our facility team to go, right, let's make this equipment available for you. We know that we're going to need this type of meeting room for this day, and then key up the cleaning teams that at X time they need to go in and run a disinfectation schedule on that room. We have also turned off all of our meeting room signage, our Condeco panels outside our meeting rooms as well, to stop people trying to book on the fly, and also to touch those surfaces, and replace them with paper.
How did you?
So, Lou, as a tech provider, you get the last word, because we're nearing the end. So next to Proxyclick, which other technologies have you implemented in the context of COVID at the front desk or elsewhere in the organization?
I feel a little bit guilty here because I'm not actually in the sales team, but in 100% honesty, it's driven us more to implement our own products. I know that's a very cliche thing to say, but as you mentioned earlier, Gregory, be it with the contactless fingerprint called the Morpho Wave, or our iris recognition software, that's a really important thing, because as I said before, it just enables people to move without touching. Yeah, really, quite simply, that's a really critical thing. So we have the right infrastructure for the future. So we are prepared that hopefully it doesn't, but if it happens again, we don't have to make so many reactions. But yeah, sadly, our own technology is the one we are using most at this moment in time. We're putting in. Sorry.
Makes sense. I didn't expect that answer. Thanks a lot. Well, thank you to both of you for sharing your knowledge, your experience in the last 2-3 months with our system, but most importantly, in general. I hope this has been helpful to the audience and that they could get inspiration from what you've learned. This is a new world, so we have to learn by doing, and this is one of the things we discovered by talking to customers, is that exchanging information between parties, between companies, between people within the same organization, in full harmony is the way to go. So thank you both. Thank you for your time, and we'll be in touch soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Catch you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye.